So we're back for round 2 of the Festool Surfix testing. One of the bits of reader feedback that we had gotten after the initial review a couple of weeks ago was that it would be nice to see how the oil would hold up to a little bit of abuse and how durable it would be to spills and stains and that sort of thing. So what I've got is a whole bunch of different types of chemicals that have been sitting on the surface for about 4 hours. And the chemicals go from relatively mild to pretty harsh. Chemical number 1 is Sailor Jerry, spiced rum, 92 proof. Number 2 is a Cabernet Sauvignon. Number 3, black coffee. Number 4, little Frank's Red Hot Original Hot Sauce. I spill that all the time. 5, WD-40. And 6, which I think is going to kill the finish, is HD-80, sodium hydroxide powder form stripper that's been soaking in water on the surface. So we're going to go through and just blot these out, clean them up, and I'm just going to do a scrub down with a wet rag and see what the surface looks like. Okay, so here's a glimpse at how things scrubbed out. The Sailor Jerry's didn't seem to do any damage at all. The red wine left a little bit of a haze. The sun's starting to come in on this, but you can see a little bit of a haze right there on the edge of the sun line that actually seems to be kind of evaporating as the surface dries from the scrubbing. The coffee doesn't really show any trace of anything. Hot sauce leaves a little bit of a residue that doesn't want to scrub out. WD-40, much damaged by the look of it. What you're seeing here is the sodium hydroxide that worked its way over. But that too, as it dries, is starting to evaporate from the center out. And that's a chemical that typically needs to be neutralized when you use it, so I'll be curious to see what that does, if anything, as it dries from the scrub down. But that's about as harsh of a chemical as you can get right there for wood surfaces. I would not expect any household interior oil to hold up to that one. So I'm going to give this another hour or two to kind of mellow out from the scrub down, and I'll get it in some better light and actually put a sys light on it for inspection and see what this all looks like as it completely dries out from the scrubbing. Well, that couple of hours turned into a couple of days. This thing's been sitting here just drying out and mellowing out during that time. Just real quick, the results are the Sailor Jerry's, as previously noted, did no damage whatsoever to the finish. Red wine is a little bit of a halo effect that stuck around, seems to have gotten underneath the finish. Not something you'd really see from across the room, but if you knew it was there and you were the one who spilled the wine, it would drive you nuts. You'd have to fix it. Coffee, no problem. The hot sauce actually scrubbed out. I did a little more water just rag and water scrubbing around on this thing during the last round of cleanup on it. The hot sauce did wipe out, which was good. It was just, it had a residue that stayed on top of the finish, didn't penetrate it, and it did scrub out. WD-40, no problem, that's a good sign. It's a fairly common household item and kind of a chemical. As expected, sodium hydroxide did quite a number on it. Didn't destroy it, but sure left a green mess underneath the finish. Totally expected, not something that's a household item, but just kind of an extreme benchmark to sort of weigh the others against. My conclusions from this are a couple of things. The original Surfix finish, when we put the oil on this test slab for our review, we did our preliminary sand prior to oil, I believe at 150 grit. It was either 150 or 180, I think it was 150. If I was going to do this on a kitchen countertop or a high exposure household wood top with Surfix, I would do that initial sand finer, probably go up to 180 to 220 range before starting the oil to close down the wood. I think that would help to prevent this type of penetration. Having the grain close down a little bit more initially would be helpful. And I probably would buff longer on both applications. I didn't overdo the buffing. The white and green V-Lees treatments during the application on this, I wanted it to be a fairly typical application. But if I was going high exposure, I think I would go a little more hardcore into the buffing. And I also think instead of doing a 2-coat application that I would do 3, maybe even 4. It's pretty quick and easy, and I think that that would add a lot of durability to it and maybe prevent this sort of thing from happening. So that's the biggest reason why I did this test, was just to see what would happen, typical sort of household stuff and a typical Surfix application. But again, I think, for most things, if this was a bookcase, not going to have red wine so much around it, 2 coats, no problem, don't have to go hardcore, but for high exposure areas, I think I would ramp it up a little bit. So hope this helps. Interesting experiment, and if you have any questions, track the review down at topcoatreview.com, and feel free to leave a question or a comment. Thanks.